Did any of you for Christmas get new clothes? Hands up if you've got an item of clothing for Christmas. A majority. Did they fit? Yes? Oh, half and half. What, one sock did and one sock didn't? It's always difficult to buy clothes for people because you don't want to get them the wrong size. You definitely don't want to buy them too large because they may feel a bit insulted. A number of years ago, my two nephews, with the help of their father, bought a pair of slippers from their mum. And they were in the shape of ducks. My sister was not overly keen on them, and one could understand why. And they were 3 sizes too large. But they said, "Don't worry, Mum, you can grow into them." Well, they were used to their feet growing. Fortunately, my sister got to the point where her feet had stopped growing. And so they were taken back to the shop, and they didn't have any the right size. My sister was somewhat relieved. A couple of days before Christmas, I asked Anita, "Where is my Christmas shirt?" She told me where it was, but she said, "You won't fit into it." I did. It had grown in the wardrobe rather than shrinking in the wardrobe. The reading from Paul's letter to the Colossians is one of the suggested readings in the wedding service. When I was living in Newport, I did an awful lot of weddings. In one church, I did 200 in 12 years. I could recite the wedding service without any problem. Could almost recite the wedding address. No, I had more than one. But the Colossians reading was one that was available for people to choose. I reckon about 75% of people went for the Corinthians reading, Paul reflecting upon love. 20% would go for the Colossians reading, and about 5% would go for a reading from Ephesians. That was quite glad it wasn't chosen very often, for it was a long paragraph without any break, no sentences. It was a hard one to read. But when couples chose the Colossians reading, I loved it as an opportunity to say to the guests who were there, "Which of you is wearing a new outfit today?" And inviting the couple to look round and see who were the cheapskates and who had put on a new outfit for the day. "Clothe yourselves," said Paul to the Colossians. "Clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, patience, forgiveness, love, peace, thankfulness, wisdom, and also singing." We missed the singing bit out, but as Roger was reading, we are to sing psalms and spiritual songs. That's part of our costume, part of our being, particularly as Methodists, is to sing of our faith. Our lives should reflect the faith we have. The way we live should reflect the grace and life of Jesus. "Put on then," said Paul. When children go to certain schools, they have uniforms to wear. And that actually can make life a lot easier for parents if they can afford the uniform, because there isn't the discussion every day, "What can I wear?" Or that, "I want to wear this today," which is wholly inappropriate for schooling. Sometimes the uniform can be very useful. I think it was in one of the books about Jane Tennyson, Inspector Jane Tennyson. She moved from uniform to plain clothes. And the big issue she had was, what am I going to wear? She said for the men it was quite easy. They just put on a suit and a shirt and a tie, and that was fine. But for the women it was a different matter. If they always wore the same things, people noticed. But you never notice when men are always wearing the same things. How we dress can say something about who we are. Paul encourages us to grow in various qualities of life. When you get up in the morning, do you dress quickly or slowly? Actually, I now know the answer. The older you are, the slower you dress. For many, that's true. Joy hasn't got to that point in life yet, because you're not that old yet. But do you remember watching Thunderbirds? They would slide down a pole and come out in a totally different outfit. Superman goes into the telephone box and comes out in a different outfit. Getting dressed is not that simple. We get dressed in a process. We put on our clothes. And we learn how to dress ourselves. Sue? How old was Amy when she could dress herself? It's all right, she's not here.
That's a long time ago.
2 or 3?
Violet can dress herself.
Violet can dress herself. And she's now 2 and a bit. 2.5. By the age of 2.5, she's learnt how to dress herself. Shoes always on the right feet?
Oh no.
No. No. Not quite yet. Oh right, okay. Wellingtons are a big issue, which one goes on which foot. We have to learn how to get dressed. It's a process. And so it is as God's people. Clothe yourselves. Clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, and so on. They are qualities that perhaps as we dress ourselves each day, we can think about putting those qualities on, bring them to mind, that when we put on our socks, we may think about compassion. When we're putting on our vest, we may think about patience. When you're doing up your Liberty bodice. As we get dressed, may we think about some of the qualities that God calls for us to wear as his citizens. That they are our national costume as a Christian. We are always to be learning. The other reading that we had that was brought to us by Roger was about Jesus, who at the age of 12 was taken to the temple for the festival of Passover. At the age of 12, he was teaching his elders. They were astonished at his wisdom. Are we good at learning from the young? I grew up in a little Methodist chapel. I started going at the age of 12. By the time I was 18, obviously I become a Sunday school teacher, because you always do that when you don't know anything. No, sorry, that's... But it's one of the first things that people say when you get to be a teenager, so you become a Sunday school teacher. Is that really the right order? I don't know. But I was a leader at the prayer group. I was a church steward. I started preaching. I was trusted by my elders to play a part within the life of the church. Jesus, at the age of 12, was teaching his elders, the learned in the temple. I wonder how often one of the reasons we may be short of youngsters in our church is we don't trust them. We don't trust them to have any role with authority and responsibility. We can have people in our communities who are in their 20s who are holding down very important, responsible jobs. But in the church, they're not allowed to do anything. Because until you're over 70, no. There's no one simple answer for why we are lacking children and young people in our church. But I know in some congregation it has been because they were not allowed to hold any responsible office, despite holding responsible jobs in their civilian life. Do we allow the youngsters in our church to teach us things? To teach us new ways of doing things? New ways of worshipping God? New ways of understanding the nature of God? New ways of being Christ people? As we learn to get dressed, so we learn the way of Christ. We learn about the qualities of life that God calls us to be in possession of. And as we grow in faith, we need to look to where it is that God is teaching us from. For sometimes the young can teach us some very important lessons about life and faith and the world in which we live. Greta Thunberg, as a teenager, challenged the world about climate change and how we respond to it. Sometimes we need to listen to the voice of the young. For at the age of 12, Jesus taught his elders. As we enter into a new year, may we commit ourselves to putting on those qualities that come with our faith in Jesus that Paul wrote to the Colossians about. As we enter a new year, may we commit ourselves to listen to the voice of the young, what they are saying about life, about faith, about the world, about God. When I started in the Methodist ministry, I was in my 20s. And I was often the youngest person in worship. I'm now in my mid-60s. And as I look around today, there may be 3 or 4 people younger than me. We need to learn from the young. But to do that, we need to go where they are and then invite them to teach us the ways of God. Put on then, as God's chosen ones, compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another. If anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. It is the humble who are willing to learn from the young. For without humility we assume we know it all.